I don't start talking about the community and generational wealth and all these different things until the end, because it's important that in order to build community, effective community, a community that will thrive, you have to focus on you first.
Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated to providing you with life strategies with a little bit of entrepreneur advice. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, welcome to the Networking with Michelle show. I'm your host, Michelle Gomez, where we discuss life strategies with a bit of entrepreneur advice. And today is a special episode in the sense that I'll talk about getting your money right, especially when it comes to personal finance. So anytime you talk about money, whether one-on-one or even in a relationship, it's always a hard conversation to have. Like, how much money do you make? How much debt do you have? Do you invest? What are you investing in? Because people feel ashamed if they're not making enough money, or they didn't pick the right investment, or maybe they try to invest previously, but they lost their money, right? And what I like about today's interview with Ash Cash, yes, Ash Cash, he is the author of The Wake Up Call, Financial Inspiration Learned from 444, a step-by-step guide on how to implement each financial principle. And yes, I did say 444 as in Jay-Z's album 444, where Ash listened to the album, dissected financial concepts from the album, and put it in a book. And he's an established author, already had best-selling books, prior to this. But this book, what I love about it is the bridge, right? So it's the bridge for our community in the sense that, okay, we're Jay-Z fans. We love Jay-Z, hip hop. But once again, financial is hard to kind of grasp. And here he put the breakdown of it in a book. And of course, he does speaking engagements and presentations on it as well. And he just does a great job walking you through from getting your income together, whether, making more money, side hustle, spending wisely, getting your credit together, and then, of course, creating multiple streams of income that leads to general wealth, and of course, helping the community, pouring back into the community when you make it. So I already know you're a Jay-Z fan. You're about to be an Ash Cash fan. So without further ado, welcome to the interview. All right, Ash Cash, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. Doing wonderful. Just happy to be here.
All right, so you're the author of several books, but this particular book is The Wake Up Call, Financial Inspiration Learned from Jay-Z's album 444. So before we dive into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And so my name is Ash Exantis, but nobody ever remembers my last name. And so I've been going by Ash Cash for several years now. But I am a former banking executive, personal banker or personal finance expert, motivational speaker, author. As you mentioned, I've written several books. I've written 6 books. 3 of them have been bestsellers. I have a book called Mind Right, Money Right, 10 Laws of Financial Freedom, which was a bestseller. I have a book called What the FICO, 12 Steps to Repaying Your Credit, which is a bestseller. And my recent book, The Wake Up Call, Financial Lessons Learned from 444, plus a step-by-step guide on how to implement each financial principle, which was just released at the top of the year, reached bestseller status rather quickly. And so I'm very happy and proud of that work. But, honorable mention as well, I have a book called Mind Right, Life Right, Manifesting Dreams Through the Laws of the Universe. And so I've always been someone who understands the power of words. And so I love to write actually. And I, pretty much help people change their mindset in order to live a better life. And so that's what I do every day. I wake up and try to inspire and motivate people, whether it's through my writings, whether it's through, giving advice, whether it's consulting for, businesses, but it's really just helping people live their best life. And it starts with the finances, which starts with the mindset.
Now, I stumbled into the banking industry myself. I spent 7 years there, and I think it was definitely the best job, best lessons, money lessons I could have, received. But how were you able to combine, I guess, just the passion of money, motivation, and message, and just catapult, I guess, your personal brand, your business out of it?
No, absolutely. I think, similar to what you just said, I spent about 14 years in the banking industry. And one of the best lessons I've learned in personal finance from a corporate perspective, being able to climb the ranks. And so I started out as a teller and wind up, my last position, I was a CEO of a credit union. And so being able to see the different facets of corporate America really helped me as an entrepreneur, but then also helped me as it relates to me having partnerships with major corporations, but then also the ability. I spent 2 years as a private banker, and as a private banker, my client I had a book of 400 clients who had investable assets of $250,000 or above, and so my biggest client was worth $22 million, and so to be able to have sort of intimate knowledge of a lot of my clients, what they were doing, their thought process, and how they managed their money was really valuable for me, as I took this journey as an entrepreneur. And so, just having that experience, really helped me a lot because not only was I able to see sort of like the practical side of money, as it relates to managing your money, what do wealthy people do, with their money, how they manage their money. But I was also able to see the mental side of money, and that's my the main thing I love to talk about, because people don't talk about that. People talk about making more money and budgeting and savings and all the practical things, but there's a mental side. And so when I looked at my clients that were wealthy and were happy wealthy, right? Because I had some miserable wealthy clients, right? And so when you look at the happy wealthy clients, and you pay attention to how they live their lives, they all sort of had similar habits. And when you looked at your angry wealthy clients, they also had similar habits. And so I was able to really take from it, all of the things that go into just living a great life, which is first happiness. And then once you're happy and you love what you're doing, that sort of transcends into money and the material things. But it really starts with the mindset and being happy, and really being in that attitude of gratitude at all times. And so all of my experiences have really helped and culminated me, helping me build this personal brand that I'm proud of, that I wake up every day excited to see whose life I can impact.
I love it. All right. So, what is I'm a Jay-Z fan, but I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit. What's so special about Jay-Z? And obviously, we know the album 444 inspired you, but do you remember like that initial reaction when you were listening to the album that created the inspiration to write the book?
Oh, absolutely. I've been a Jay-Z fan for many years, since I was a teenager, actually, and always loved, past the bragging and past the materialism. I was always able to pick out sort of jewels and gems that he was dropping in his music. And so, I've always been a fan, and to see, how influential he is for the culture, as far as, from day one, telling people what cars to buy, what clothing to wear and not wear, and all these, what sounds to listen to. So he's been very influential. But when I listened to this album, it hit me immediately, because this, the first song, which is the intro, he talks of, he's talking to himself and his alter ego and kill Jay-Z. But the second song, which is the story of OJ, on my first listen of the album, I actually didn't even pass song number 2. Like, I listened to that song over and over and over again, because in the song, he talks about, financial freedom is our only hope. And he's talking about credit, and he's talking about, generational wealth. He's talking about, all of these principles, financial principles that, I truly believe. And so when I started to look at, racism and institutional racism and the cop killings of innocent people and all of the, race bias, gender bias, all these things that are happening in the world today. I know as a finance expert, not an expert, I hate using that word, but as someone who talks about personal finance, I know that it's all intertwined socially, politically, everything that we need and everything that we want out of this life is intertwined in some way to our finances and how we manage those finances and how we use those finances to maintain our power. And so when he said financial freedom is our only hope, I knew immediately that this was something that I needed to expound on. The inspiration at first wasn't a book. I'm a financial educator, and so I travel throughout the country and speak at different conferences and, churches and different organizations, but mainly colleges. I have a great connection, at colleges. Like, I connect with the students really well, and so I do a lot of college talks. And so immediately I said, what, this would be a great opportunity to do a college talk using Jay-Z's album to teach about these principles, and that's where the inspiration came. And then as I listened to the album more, as I started to think about all of the different complex financial terms that he was giving us in the album, and I started to think about doing these workshops and how after the workshops people were coming to me with more questions and emailing me and wanting to know more. I decided that this is a great opportunity to bridge the gap between what Jay-Z as a businessman, as an artist, is saying about these things, but also someone needs to teach people, right? Because a lot of his audience, they haven't, they've heard the term generational wealth before, but what does it mean? They've heard the term will. What does it mean? They know credit, right? They know they have to build their credit, but how do they do it? I mean, I felt like as a personal finance expert, it was my duty, and financial educator, it was my duty to really, help people understand the how, right? So Jay-Z gave you the what needs to happen, but how do you do it? And that's why I decided to write the book.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the book, right? Because I feel like you are the bridge between the students, regular folk, to Jay-Z, right? Because we love him, we love him, the music. And I'm like you, not just the songs, but I love when he does interviews because he's always dropping jewels. Like, I think he's probably one of the best people when it comes to doing interviews. I learned so much from him. But it's kind of like, we're like, okay, well, Jay-Z, you know what you were doing before you became a rapper. Like, he's always had money and he's been able to flip money. And I feel like your book is, you and your book, as the brand, is the bridge between, regular folk, the hip hop community, the students, however you want to, break it down, into the aspirations of, we can be successful based on how we define success and wealth for ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a great point because, I definitely think that, when it comes to financial freedom, it's all relative. It's relative to what you define that as, And so, somebody who has aspirations to live in Beverly Hills, and if they want to do that and they want to be financially free, so that takes a different level of not even a different level, but that takes a mindset and a determination towards that. But that is that person's goal, and that's what that person wants. If you want to, be financially free within your current circumstance, if you, love your neighborhood and want to live in your neighborhood, but you just don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. That was the goal. And so I'm glad that you mentioned, having that bridge and giving people sort of, the way to live their best life, because again, it's all relative. Financial freedom does not look the same for everyone, and so it really is different. But as you mentioned, Jay-Z, in one of my favorite songs, You Don't Know, Jay-Z says, I came into the game, 100 grand strong, 9 to be exact, from grinding G-Packs, right? And so he's saying that when I came into the game, I already had $900,000, right? And so, that's a different level. If he never became a rapper, he still had a certain level of money, and he knew a certain level of grind. And so definitely, some people may not necessarily, associate with that. And so one of my goals was definitely to bridge that gap and provide people with some, real life examples of where they are right now, but real life examples of how to take these lessons and apply it to their life today.
Yeah. And speaking of communities, and you did a great job when it comes to references and history checks from Claude Anderson. Maggie Anderson. I heard her speak last year. I feel like I got her last name wrong.
Maggie Anderson.
Okay. One thing you wrote, you said the more money that comes into a community and is recycled within that community, the more opportunities that community can create for said community, like our community. And you say, whether it's African American, school, whatever the talent, your interest may be, that's your community. But sometimes I feel like there's a struggle between how do I get my personal economy right before I can venture into the community or the collaborative economy. Can you give us some guidance when it comes to that?
Oh, absolutely. And that is you're hitting it right on the nose. Because if you look at the book and how I laid it out, actually, it actually flows in that direction. Each chapter begins with you, right? And so, I talk, some of the examples I talk about the, big idea of community, but I also, each step-by-step guide, I don't start talking about the community and generational wealth and all these different things until the end, because it's important that in order to build community, effective community, a community that will thrive, you have to focus on you first. And so the biggest mistake that a lot of us do in our community is we look for community to build us up individually, when it should be the opposite. We need to build ourselves up individually so that collectively we have a strong community. And the reason why I say that, when you look at, even if it's, forget going outside of Black and brown people. If you go to an affluent Black neighborhood, the neighborhood wasn't affluent because of the neighborhood. It was the affluent people, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the judges, who were successful within their own right, who came together and created this neighborhood. And that's what made it an affluent Black neighborhood. And so we need to realize that if we want our communities to change, we need to change first. We need to educate ourselves. We need to be better stewards of our money. We need to direct our money in the right way. Once we take control of our personal finance, our personal success, then we become interdependent. That's what it's about. We don't want a dependency on a community. We want to be interdependent, meaning that I can stand on my own at 100%. That in my household, we do what we need to do so that our household can thrive. And now, when each of us begin to do that, we then we're able to, now I can support the black business, the black business owner. Because if, if I don't have the dollars to support the black business owner, even if every person who could opens up a black shop in a black neighborhood, that black shop wouldn't last long because the community needs to support it. And so that is an excellent point. And I intentionally made sure that the way the book read, it's really about taking care of your personal finance first, and then you start to look at community, and then you start looking at generational wealth. But it definitely starts with you.
And what city are you based in?
I'm in New York City.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you were more in the DMV area. Because I know here in Houston, when I say we, as in, going to an event and having dialogue. And it's kind of like, okay, as a black business owner, do I put my black business in the black community to show that I'm supporting the community? But I'm like, there's black people in the suburbs, and I'm like, they need love too. Maybe because I'm in the suburbs. But but I feel like there's always that argument going back and forth. And I'm like, we as black people, we are everywhere, and we need businesses everywhere, and we need to support as much as possible, regardless of the location of the business. And of course, online and technology, the expansion is just crazy now. But I feel like that's still a debate that needs to weaken over time, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was Claude Anderson who said this. So someone said this: buy black but sell to everyone, right? And I think that you're always going to get pushback from people who don't fully understand, right? And so I'll give you a prime example that's close and dear to my heart. I grew up in a single parent home. My mom always worked all her life. She's a Haitian immigrant. Always worked at factory jobs. Really does not understand the concept of entrepreneurship. And so, as somebody who was relatively successful in the banking world, my mom literally cursed me out. Almost put hands on me the moment that I told her that I was quitting my job to be an entrepreneur, to start my own business. Like, she thought I was the craziest person that ever walked, right? She touched my head and started praying for me because she was like, she just can't understand, right? And so at the end of the day, I love my mama dearly, but in the same breath, she doesn't really understand. Like, I can't really take business advice from somebody who never had a business, even if I love you, right? I love you so much with all my heart, but I can't take advice from you because you don't fully understand, this perspective. And so, from a perspective of the community wanting black businesses in black communities, to show other black people within the community, to inspire and motivate them. I think that's definitely something that needs to happen, especially when you look within our communities. There are businesses within the community that are doing very well and thriving within the community. So I think that those similar businesses that can thrive within the black community, should begin to put them in those communities. But at the end of the day, business doesn't have a color. Business is business. I don't care if you are if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Jewish. Business is business, and there's a right way to do business, and there's a wrong way to do business. And I think that for the most part, when you're making a business decision, you have to lead that way because, again, from experience, I've done many things that were for the community that almost cost me my home, right? That I wanted to do certain things, and I wanted to, do this for the culture. And then, it wasn't sustainable because, business, it wasn't just a sustainability. And so you have to have a good business model. So, for example, I do a lot of free events in communities, but I can't do more free events than I do paid events because if I can't take care of my basic necessities, I'm no good at those free events anyway. If I'm not able to show a certain level of success, I can't help people become prosperous if I'm not prosperous. And so I think that there's a balance between giving back, but also running good business. And I think that for those who have this battle, have this back and forth, I think that it first starts with doing good business, and then when you do good business, you're able to give back. There's many things that I do within the community that are not financially beneficial for me, but I give back because there are other things I do outside of the community that are financially beneficial. And so so sometimes you might have to take blessings from one place and sprinkle them to another place. And I think that's the solution, is really just figuring out how you can do good business, and have, your cup overflow, right? If we want to go there, it's really about having your cup overflow before you can start giving. Because if you start giving without your cup overflowing, you're actually making the people that you're giving to thieves. They're stealing from you. And so you want to make sure that you do everything in your power to overflow so that you can, give back.
Absolutely. I think my favorite chapter is chapter 611, Take Real Chances Over Advances, because you provide some great stories. Master P turning down $1 million from Interscope, which I didn't even know about, or at least not recently. Maybe I heard it back in the day. And of course, Lauryn Hill, one of my favorite artists, and just how the music industry is shady. Of course, it's changed, but it's shady. And that's why Jay-Z made the comment, like, artists are still taking advances. But going back to what you just said, do good business regardless of your industry. But I think, does everyone need to have a side hustle? Or do you really need a transition from employee to entrepreneurship at some point?
I think everybody needs a side hustle. I think that there are some people who work within corporate America who make great money and they need to stay there. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, because those who, you think about, major executives at Fortune 500 companies, which black and brown, they were like two, right? But if you start thinking about, some people who are making great money, who are able to, control or be part of a major corporation, but that money that they're making, they can actually recycle that back into the community, right? They can use that to fund somebody else's business. They can help, build businesses. And so I am not one of those folks who believes that entrepreneurship is for everybody, because it takes a certain type of personality. It takes it takes a lot of mental fortitude to be an entrepreneur. And so not everybody's built for it. Some people are going to have to work 9 to 5, but there's nothing wrong with that, and so that's why I say that it is important that everybody has a side hustle. Even the person who, is an executive for a major corporation and is making, high six figures. They need to have, they need to merrily eat off the streams, right? And so they need to have a side hustle. They need to create multiple streams of income. They need to invest in real estate. They need to be investing in the market. They need to be able to have different sources of income so that if anything ever happens to that main income, that main stream of income, it doesn't affect their livelihood. It doesn't affect their ability to provide for their family. It doesn't affect them, in a way that could be devastating and controlling. And so I do believe that no matter if you're an entrepreneur, you need multiple streams of income. If you work 9 to 5, you need multiple streams of income. And so I think that it's really important that everyone focuses on how to diversify their income so that they could create true financial freedom. We think about 2008 when there was a recession and people who had great paying jobs because of the recession lost those jobs, and now they didn't even know what to do. They couldn't pay for those mortgages. They couldn't pay for those, car notes. They couldn't pay for those, boats that they bought. And that's because they had too much of a reliance. There was too much variability in their income. And so I think that it's important that people, again, diversify to a point where they're able to, have multiple streams of income and not rely on just one source.
It's a couple of things. You mentioned Jay-Z was very intentional about this album. Um, he's always been strategic. Same thing with Beyonce, with the song Formation, particularly. But what do you think is going to have to happen within society to how are we going to decipher the message from the melody, right? Because they're teaching us, they're sharing it, right? And some of us are we just bobbing our heads.
Yeah, I think and that's a great question. I think that efforts like this, I think that it's going to take a collective, right? So one person can't do it. When you think about movements that have happened in the past, the Malcolm X's, the Martin Luther Kings, the Marcus Garveys, it's usually like a one head, right? It's usually like one person that's in charge, and then the moment, not the moment, but the adversaries or the people who don't want to see this movement happen. If they get rid of that one head, then it's a damaging blow to the movement, and so I think that as the Jay-Z's and the Beyoncé's and even the Diddy's of the world start to use their platform to awaken people and to plant seeds of empowerment into people's heads, what that's going to do is create more artists who are now willing. Because if the top of the food chain is willing to put everything on the line to get this message out, then people are gonna excuse the pun, fall into formation. Right? They're gonna start. Okay, now it's cool to have these type of conversations, and so then that's when the conversations start to happen. That's when people like myself, and I'm not the only person. Like I know of two other books. Fast shout to my guy, Jeremiah. He wrote a book called "Financial Freedom Is Our Only Hope," which is similar themes book, but he's giving you keys to learn how to use your money. And I forget the title of the other book, but there was another gentleman who wrote a book that was inspired by Jay-Z's album. And so there are going to be people on the ground, right? Like I'm in the jails, I'm in the schools, I'm on the ground, right? And so they're going to be people on the ground who are going to now take this and be able to spread this message. And so now I'm able to take the people that you idolize. I'm able to take their message and now, make it digestible. I have people who told me this is the first time that they've ever, read a personal finance book, and they love the way it was done in a language that they can understand. And so I think that more of these type of efforts, anybody listening, if you're inspired by something that's happening in pop culture and you're able, to use that as a lesson, I say do it, because that's something that has been really, really effective. Is being able to bridge the gap with what people are watching and consuming for entertainment purposes, and really getting the true meaning from those things to be able to teach.
Why is this the wake up call? Why now? Why 2018?
It's so definitely 2018, because when you look at a lot of the injustice that has happened in the past 5 years, when you look at number 45, I refuse to say his name, but if you look at number 45 and the blatant racism that he spews from the top position, financial freedom is our only hope. And when you think of any other time in American history, there has always been some type of economic injustice, whether it's slavery, whether it's Jim Crow laws, whether it was mass incarceration, whether it was redlining, all these different things that were legally stopping people from building wealth, from stopping their economy. And that economy is what allowed people to fund their campaigns and their politicians and the people that they want in office. And so we need to realize at this stage of the game, when we have, a racist, and this is my opinion, we have a racist at the top position, in the country. But we have the power if we come together collectively. Now is the time. Now is the time to do it. It's a wake up call. If we don't realize that, if we continue to do the same things, we're going to get the same results. Now it's time to try something different. You think about Martin Luther King, the moment that he, everybody talks about, I have a dream. That's the speech. Every time the Martin Luther King's birthday come up, everybody wants to dig in your head about I have a dream. And the reason why that digging that in your head is because they want you to only want and forget who they are, but there is a concerted effort for you to think about civil rights, right? But I Have a Dream was 1964. Dr. King didn't die till 1968. So between 1964 and 68, what was he talking about? What was his message? Why are we hearing those speeches? And the fact of the matter is that for those 4 years, he had an awakening, right? He had his wake up call, and his wake up call said that it's about economics, and that's what his main fight was. It was about economics. And so we need to understand that. We need to understand that there is, people are afraid of people who are economically sound, right? Because if you control the dollar, you control everything else. And so I think that as more people start to understand this, that financial freedom is our only hope, they begin to spread their message to their communities, and slowly but surely, we become the majority. And then when we become the majority, there isn't anything someone can do to stop that flow, because, we are awakening and we are awoke, and we start to teach our kids at an early age. We start doing things that allow us to really, this becomes part of the culture, not just a few of us doing it, but, majority of us are managing our money the right way. We're saving. We're building businesses. We're passing those down to our kids. We're creating generational wealth. When the bulk of us are doing it, that's when it's going to happen. And at the end of the day, it might happen tomorrow. It might happen in 5 years, and 10 years, and 20 years. But that's our only hope. We have to take back control.
I love it. I love it. Before we wrap up, what are one or two things we can do to move forward in that economic development?
I think that the first thing that we need to do is realize our God-given right to abundance.
Mindset.
We have to realize that, because if we start out the game thinking that we're behind, thinking that the game is rigged, it's against us, thinking that there's just but so much that we're going to get, or but so much we can do, then we're always going to be in that space. And so it's important for us to understand that our higher power did not put us here to struggle. That struggle is part of the process of success. It's only to build you up. Mind right, life right. Mind right, money right. Mind right, love right. Mind right, body right. Anything you need in this world, get your mind right first, and then everything else will follow. So that's the first thing I would say, is that you have to get your God-given, you have to understand your God-given right to abundance. And then once you do that, you have to then, number two, change your relationship with money. We are taught that we need to work hard for money, but wealthy people don't work hard for money. Wealthy people make money work for them. And so we need to do the same. We need to change our relationship with money. Instead of waking up every day figuring out how we're going to work hard to get money, we need to figure out how can we make money work for us. And yes, if we are starting out, we're not starting out with a trust fund, and we may not have the inheritance. But at the end of the day, even if we have to get a job to work hard for money in the beginning, the ultimate goal is to use that money not to sustain our lifestyle, but to use that money to now make money work for us. And that is the paradigm shift that needs to happen. because if we continue to only rely on our physical labor, we will continuously be at a disadvantage. We need to change that relationship and say, what are the assets? What are the things that I can use this money to buy? What can I? Is it intellectual property? Is it real estate? Is it stocks? Is it crypto? Whatever it is. What can you do to change your relationship with money? You do those two things. You get your mind right first, then you change your relationship. Then we are in the ball game. Then we begin to live the life that we're supposed to be living.
I love it. And Ash goes into the detail with this in a new book, The Wake Up Call, Financial Inspiration, Learn from 444, a step-by-step guide on how to implement each financial principle. Ash, how can my listeners get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Definitely visit my website, IamAshCash.com. All of my information is there. You can also connect with me on social media. Very active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and my handle is IamAshCash.
Such a classic name.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ash, you are appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. I appreciate you, and definitely looking forward to, continuing to build and having this dialogue.
Cool.